That's what champions do.
Welcome into Pro Football Today, post-game showtime. That's right, we've got to wrap up here as the Eagles top the Packers 34-29, and Packers were sitting on top heading into that halftime, as you guys know, if you came and hung out with me and Tom Vecchio, but Eagles were able to flip the script regardless of the amount of turnovers. They were able to keep their heads on straight. They were able to get things sorted. They were able to pick up some massive yardage on the grounds. Big thanks to Saquon Barkley. And Tom and I were talking about the impact he can have in the second half. Some people even went in and found some quality props and market bets to light up the charts when it came to Barkley and what he was going to do for this team. 3 tutties on the night, 2 of those being rushed and 1 of them a receiving touchdown. And we get the close result of the Eagles landing on top. Week 1, Tom, what did you think of that second half of the matchup?
Yeah, really solid amount of scoring, and not just in the second half, but in the game overall. We saw the offense that we wanted to see, and we saw it from, I would say, most of the players at least we wanted to see overall. Big second or big start of the second half for A.J. Brown with that 67-yard touchdown, I believe it was. Hurts them, got things rolling. Devonta Smith hit the over on the prop that I spoke about. Didn't necessarily get it done from the Packers side of things with Christian Watson, but we saw some good things from the Packers, and ultimately this might be a tough thing for the Packers or a team like the Packers where, massive game from Reed. Dobbs still has plenty of work. We saw Jacobs turn things up in the second half, but it just wasn't Christian Watson's week. And that just might be the case where they have so many options that not every player is going to have a huge game. So, we were wrong at least I was wrong about Watson this week. And if you are on Reed, that's awesome. But, next week it could be the reverse where Reed has a little bit of a slower game and Watson has this big game just because they have so many options. So all in all, good start. Field wasn't the best condition, but, these teams get to travel back home and, move on to week 2.
Yeah, and I think what a test to be able to come in week 1, make the travel, have the adjustment on a different kind of field. I mean, soccer fields and football fields are tremendously different, and then you add the climate to it, you add the moisture to it. So for 2 teams that have high expectations on their shoulders this season, I say that they still put on quite a game. You mentioned the big return coming back from halftime. Let's just say cumulatively, these 2 teams put up 21 points. So they definitely came back with their head on their shoulders, as I was hoping. Jordan Love, he's got that composure. He's got that confidence. You saw him not shaken up, but you saw him kind of frustrated, yet still trying to produce for his team. Also, something else to keep in mind coming back from that halftime, you see a team in the Eagles, they were able to kind of manage the clock differently. They started to rack up on possession as well as plays. Packers were kind of leading statistically in most categories going into halftime, and then coming out on the other side, Eagles in the ground game, that was probably the biggest thing to their success tonight, and their ability to get there. I mean, initially, I think Saquon Barkley had 45-something rushing yards, but had those 2 massive touchdowns, and then it just built off from there. Closed out the night with over 100 at 102, and what a dual threat he is. I mean, pass catching, on the ground, anything is possible, and he just looks so refreshed, so rejuvenated, and even better in an Eagles jersey. I mean, is this going to live up to the hype coming in this season?
I think it certainly will. And the thought I had was, what if Saquon played with this quality of offense his entire career? What would we be viewing Saquon as literally one of the best running backs of all time? Just he had awesome numbers with the Giants, all things considered, but they could have been sky high if he was with this type of offense. The other thing we should note is, Jordan Love shaken up at the end of the game, whatever he's dealing with this lower leg injury. They were working on his calf throughout the second half of the game or in the fourth quarter. So we'll need some clarity on that. That obviously is, I don't want to say the Packers season hinges on Jordan Love, but it kind of does. So massive note from the Packers. They still have some obviously fantastic pieces on offense. I think the Eagles are only going to get better. Things are going to get ironed out with their offensive line. I think their defense will kind of shape up as the season goes on. They still have Brown, Devonta Smith. They'll get Jahan Dotson worked into the offense as the season goes on. Goddard, Saquon, Gainwell. It's all good things for the Eagles.
Yeah, and I would say both teams, blueprint-wise, have a lot of weaponry to pull from, have a lot of things that are going to help them be successful this season. As you mentioned, Jordan Love picking up that lower body injury. I think that they were saying that he had to be carted off the field, so hopefully it's not something too significant, because this season does ride on Jordan Love. I mean, a lot of the hope, a lot of the confidence in what this team can produce in the NFC North is riding on the shoulders of how Jordan Love is going to be able to execute and utilize those weapons. We've talked heavily about his weapons being healthy for him, but now it looks like we have to keep in mind, can Jordan Love be healthy enough to be there for his weapons? So we'll see what takes place when they get back to the States, get some chances to look into things a bit further, but hopefully it's nothing too serious. And I think you're right when it comes to the Eagles. I mean, they're just getting the party started over there. Outside of anything else fantastic that I saw for the night, like you said, offenses came to life. I think the Packers defense was worth a look, worth an excitement, worth being talked about, because you got Gray that came in hot, wrapping his legs around on a sack. There was a lot of exciting defensive plays, at least on the Packers side for me, more on the Packers side than on the Eagles side. But the Eagles are that team that just kind of pick up and rack up things defensively as the season goes along. So were you equally as impressed when it came to the Packers defense as we get ready to wrap up the recap?
Yeah, the Packers defense, I will say what they did well, and the announcers kind of touched on it, where like they brought pressure, but they were able to contain Hurts, where they didn't like overextend the pressure. They were able to keep him contained so he didn't rush too much. Like coming into the third quarter, whatever it was, he only had 11 rushing yards. So they brought good pressure and contained him, and that's absolutely going to be something that's vital against a number of different quarterbacks across the league. So again, building blocks for these teams. And frankly, if Jordan Love is hurt in any significant capacity, the Packers defense are going to be the ones that are going to have to answer the bell to keep them in game. So a good first-ish step for them, but it is yet to be seen how important they will be for the Packers season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should clarify, Eagles did come in strong when it came to applying the pressure. They came up with more yardage when they applied their sacks. So both teams definitely had a strong start to week one. Tom and I are going to continue to recap this game as it closed out in Brazil. But also, we got to start previewing and looking ahead to Sunday, because a lot of big matchups and big news if you hung out with us earlier today on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid TV. So don't go anywhere. We got a quick break, and Tom and I continue to dive in on the other side.
Buy or sell, Anthony Richardson will be a top 7 fantasy quarterback this season. We're keeping this realistic here. We know that nobody would think that he'll be in the top 3, probably not even the top 5. How about top 7, George? Buy or sell?
You know, if he stays healthy, top 5 is not out of question here at all. He's a running quarterback. We know how valuable they can be. My worry is going to be what I mentioned when we talked about the Indianapolis Colts. Boy, man, if Pittman were to go down, it's not a lot to throw. He'll be running for his life half the time there. I like Richardson a lot. Small sample size of what we saw of what he's going to be. I played the 5 games last year before the injury here. So for a longer season, we'll see if he gets to catch up to him, what he can do. He's going to have to prove he can throw the ball to be down the field here. I'm going to buy this. All right, I want to buy on Anthony Richardson. I want him to be that guy because I want to see the excitement that he can bring. I think, smart money might say go the other way, because there's so many quarterbacks in that tier that, hey, he could have a good year and still not finish top 7. That being said, I think he will show, just like he did last year, he's going to be dynamic. I'm buying top 7.
Yeah, reminds me so much of Cam Newton in the early days too. I'm going to sell on this. I think it's too high. I think most leagues take away points for interceptions. If that's the case, I think his numbers are going to be 20-something touchdowns, 15, 16-something interceptions. That's going to negate some stuff. Yes, he will run. Can he play an entire season? Still very questionable for me. I have him as the 9th best fantasy quarterback at the end of the season, just outside the top 7. So I'm going to go sell on that.
Welcome back into Pro Football Today, post-game show with myself, Kasey Hudson, and Tom Vecchio. We were just chatting about the recap of the Eagles topping the Packers, also kind of touching base on what much we know in terms of Jordan Love's injury. As of now, we just know it's a lower body injury. I think he was able to kind of stand up. We're not fully clear on how he got off the field. Some things are saying carded. Some people are saying that he was helped off the field. But regardless, we are hoping that the Packers are not going to be down their QB1 because there is a lot resting on the shoulders of Jordan Love. So outside of that, maybe we just go with an overall takeaway, because you said something last night when we had a post-game show together, Tom. Do not overreact. It is just week 1. So if you could pinpoint one takeaway from this matchup, from what the offenses were able to pull through together, from what the defenses were able to pull through together, what's your biggest takeaway in this matchup?
A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith are still arguably one of, if not the best duo receivers in the league. The downfield threat that Brown brings, the slot play from Smith is only going to get better with Kellen Moore at the helm calling plays. The pre-snap motion was awesome for the Eagles. They're going to be firing on all cylinders this year.
I like it. I'm going to take mine over to the Packers. A little bit of criticism, but the red zone play, it was just a little all over the place for me, and I know that there was a lot of conditions, a lot of factors playing into everything, but considering the conversation, the excitement, and the headlines gearing up regarding the Packers, I just felt like you can't go 1-4 in the red zone when you've got a strong quarterback in Jordan Love and all the weaponry that he had in the arsenal. So I'm excited to see what happens in week 2. Granted that we have a healthy Jordan, or that we have a healthy Love. Fingers crossed. Keeping to the quarterback conversation, though, we've got a loaded deck coming in on Sunday, so we got to preview some things. If you hung out with us on Pro Football Today, which you should have, especially for pregame, you found out, along with us finding out, that Russell Wilson will not be QB1 on Sunday. You got Steelers taking on the Falcons. Falcons adding to their defense so that they could be a little bit more formidable. Then you've got a Steelers defense that kind of shows up all the time as long as TJ Watt is in the mix. But what are you gauging when it comes to this Steelers-Falcons matchup? And what is it going to do morale-wise, having your QB1 swap out for Justin Fields, who now has to prove a larger point that he maybe should have had the job to begin with? I don't know. Too much drama. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, a lot going on for this one. I would say Steelers, I don't want to say losing their QB1 because they barely had a QB1 to begin with. It was like a 1A, 1B. So It's kind of just like either side of the coin that you want. For the Falcons, obviously this is fantastic for them. This season is shaping up. I'm super excited on the Falcons. Bringing Kirk Cousins, what have we been getting from him? New look offense. Obviously Robinson coming in the backfield. With Kyle Pitts, Drake London, a full passing offense is what we should be seeing from the Falcons. Everyone is expecting big things. I'm heavy on the Falcons. Kirk Cousins, you name it, that's what we're going to be getting from them in terms of a high octane offense, which they haven't had in multiple seasons. As for this game, I would slightly lean the Falcons 3.5 right now. If we get full confirmation that Russell Wilson is in fact out, I think we can go ahead and look to the Falcons very comfortably. I would certainly look to them as first half as well. Under 41, I still think could be in play just because we're going to see a clear lack of scoring from the Steelers. Again, that could change if Wilson does end up playing, but that's my main takeaway right now.
I actually like both of those quite a bit. I'm excited to see what goes down with the Falcons offense. But most importantly, I know that some people aren't entirely convinced that the Falcons' new plugs on defense are going to be that much of a help. But I think that to a degree, we're going to see more efficiency. And with that, you've got a Matthew Judon who's going to be out for blood. He's going to want his statistics to go back to what it was 2 years ago. And it's going to be a shark in the water going after a guy like Justin Fields, who is one of the most sacked quarterbacks out there. So I'm going to be intrigued to see what defensive props come down the pipeline here as we work through Saturday. That's where I'm going to be gearing towards. But outside of the Steelers conversation, another one that's a top talked about is Dallas versus Cleveland. Cleveland's defense and Dallas's drama. What do you got going on there?
Yeah, a lot of exciting storylines. Big on Dallas in this game, the lack of health updates and the cloudiness around the health updates when it comes to Deshaun Watson's shoulder is massive. So I'm going to be looking at Jerry Jeudy under 3.5 receptions, sitting at minus 128. I don't think he's a good receiver. B, he's not going to be the dominant option in that offense behind Amari Cooper, David Njoku. And C, they should be a run-first offense the majority of time under Kevin Stefanski, even though they don't have Nick Chubb. It should be Jerome Ford coming out of the backfield. And then D, Deshaun Watson is not healthy with this shoulder that he hasn't thrown in forever long. So, and we also have the Cowboys as a good defense. So under for Jerry Jeudy on 3.5. Give me the Cowboys with the points.
Yeah, we've seen the Browns have to do a couple QB shuffles, but we'll see. We've got more to preview, obviously, because like we said, a lot of excitement coming in on Sunday, so don't go anywhere. Stick with us here on Pro Football Today, the post-game show with Kasey Hudson and Tom Vecchio.
Buy or sell, Anthony Richardson will be a top 7 fantasy quarterback this season. We're keeping this realistic here. We know that nobody would think that he'll be in the top 3, probably not even the top 5. How about top 7, George? Buy or sell?
You know, if he stays healthy, top 5 is not out of question at all. He's a running quarterback. We know how valuable they can be. My worry is going to be what I mentioned when we talked about the Indianapolis Colts. Boy, man, if Pittman were to go down, there's not a lot to throw. He'll be running for his life half the time there. I like Richardson a lot. Small sample size of what we saw of what he's going to be. I played the 5 games last year before the injury here. So over a longer season, we'll see if he gets some catch up to him, what he can do. He's going to have to prove he can throw the ball. So be down the field here. I'm going to buy this. All right, I want to buy on Anthony Richardson. I want him to be that guy because I want to see the excitement that he can bring. I think, smart money might say go the other way because there's so many quarterbacks in that tier that, hey, he can have a good year and still not finish top 7. That being said, I think he will show, just like he did last year, he's going to be dynamic. I'm buying top 7.
Yeah, reminds me so much of Cam Newton in the early days too. I'm going to sell on this. I think it's too high. I think most leagues take away points for interceptions. If that's the case, I think his numbers are going to be 20-something touchdowns, 15, 16-something interceptions. That's going to negate some stuff. Yes, he will run. Can he play an entire season? Still very questionable for me. I have him as the 9th best fantasy quarterback at the end of the season, just outside the top 7. So I'm going to go sell on that.
Welcome back into Pro Football Today, post-game show with Kasey Hudson and Tom Vecchio. We were just breaking down some of the games coming up on Sunday, but Tom and I were talking during the break. It looks like Tom saw some sources mentioning that it could potentially be a high ankle sprain for Love and the Packers. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that, see if anything else rolls out in this last round with us here on Pro Football Today on the post-game show. But Tom's gauging some great bets and previews for Sunday's matchup. We talk Steelers and Falcons. As we learned, Russell Wilson will not be in the pocket for the Steelers. Fields getting the tap there. Then we talk Dallas-Cleveland. You've got Watson working through an injury, and we know how the Browns have to circulate their QBs when that happens. Let's jump over to Jacksonville taking on Miami. You got a Miami secondary getting a big payday. You got a number of guys on that Miami roster that are getting paid. So will the play come through? Will it match the excitement of the paychecks, Tom? What are you seeing for Sunday?
I'm seeing a lot of points in this game. A 49.5 over-under is the highest on the slate. I think we're going to see like a normal Miami game, which is a lot of offense, a lot of big plays from their offense, given the talent that they have on their roster. So immediately I'm going to Dolphins first half team total over 13.5. We want those 2 touchdowns. Sitting there on Sunday, I already can envision it. Red zone pops up. Scott Hansen, oh, surprise, surprise, Tyreek Hill, 50, 60-yard touchdown, whatever. Whether it's going to be Waddle, Devon Achane breaking off another 60-yard run. 2 touchdowns in the first half. Dolphins team total over 13.5. I think they win this game. I would take them at the -3.5, but I will expect this game to go over 49.5 as well.
I'm hopping on board that first half one for sure. I've seen a number of times where they come out and control the tempo. If they're going to fall off by any means, it's going to happen in the chase in the fourth quarter. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that they're going to live up to most of the hype that the Dolphins are supposed to be carrying through. Not to mention a Miami-born gal cannot go against the Dolphins. Then you've got Houston taking on Indy. This conversation, this matchup always entertains me because you got Richardson who has, who's coming off of injury. We have to see if he is going to be able to prove all the expectations on his shoulders. I know I've said a number of times UF doesn't really produce quarterbacks. Sorry, guys. And then you've got CJ Stroud coming off an immaculate rookie season. Now he has even more pressure on his shoulders to build off of that. He's added a few weapons to his offense. What are you seeing in this one?
I'm seeing this as a huge matchup because it's a divisional matchup to start the season, but I am very high on the Texans this season. I have a Super Bowl ticket on them at 25-1. Currently, they are 15-1, so I got them at a great price. I'm going to be going with a Tank Dell touchdown in this one at plus 220, coming back from the injury that he has. I know this is a loaded offense with Nico Collins. They bring in Steph Diggs. There's a lot going on, and this offense is going to be similar to kind of what we see with the Packers. Like, just because I think Nico Collins is amazing and I have the over on his season-long receiving yards, some games are not going to be a Nico Collins game because Diggs is going to be having an awesome game and Tank Dell and Joe Mixon coming out of the backfield. That's what we're going to get from some of these offenses this year. It's like directionally we can be right and say, okay, this offense can put up 4 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns, all these yards. It's just not this player. So I want to start off with Tank Dell coming back from the injury. We saw him flashing in preseason, that connection with CJ Stroud. I think Stroud himself is in for another amazing year. I'll take the Texans over 48.5 and -2.5 in this game.
I love that a lot, too, because one of the things that the Texans were missing was having a consistent run game last season. So now you have an opportunity to kind of establish that a lot stronger. And then you've got some other Bulldogs coming off the edge there, adding pressure to their defense, which is going to help them be able to contend. I mean, that was kind of the issue. They had a spotty defense. They weren't able to compete down the stretch when those matters, and I think that they're going to be able to come up strong in that category as well. I'm all in on the Texans. I had them being a surprise team to roll into the Super Bowl as well. A team probably not delivering so many surprises, but we'll see. We got to see what's going on with the Giants. I know you mentioned you probably have some glimmers of hope there, but you got the Giants taking on the Vikings. Vikings not in a rebuild mode, I would say. I mean, you still got one of the top producing wide receivers on your roster, but what's one of the best angles to coming out with this one?
Yeah, this game's probably going to be the worst game on the slate, but that doesn't mean we can't find good prop value there. Devin Singletary coming out of the backfield for the Giants, over 51.5 rushing yards. This is a volume play. At a certain point, he's going to get there, I want to say, solely based on attrition, where the Vikings don't have a good defense, the Giants don't have a good offense. But if he's going to be seeing close to 20 touches a game, we can get him at 51.5 and take the over. Again, I'm not going to watch this game. I hope Red Zone doesn't show any of this game. But 41.5 over under super low. But again, if we're going to be seeing 15, 18, 20 touches from him, he can get to over 51.5. That's all I have to say. The Vikings are not good. The Giants are not good. Don't watch this game.
Would you at least entertain the typical prop bet when it comes to Jefferson or anyone on the Vikings offense?
I honestly don't know. If Sam Darnold's not a good quarterback, he has not shown at any point in his career that he can sustain a high-volume wide receiver. So no matter how much talent Jefferson has, if a quarterback can't get him the ball there accurately and efficiently, this might be one of the worst years of Jefferson's career. And it's not his fault.
That's the worst part about it. I mean, especially to come out racking up 1,000-yard seasons like it's nothing and then have the fault at the quarterback position. That's a rough one. We got New England Patriots taking on Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals looking to be a sneaker in the mix. And a lot of people are saying they deserve more respect on their name. Obviously, this matchup sitting at a 7.5 spread currently on the lines. But is it as easy said and done that the Bengals are going to walk out with this one?
The Bengals start off week one slow, and this line was 8.5, and we get the news that T. Higgins is now doubtful, and Jamar Chase is questionable. Higgins is dealing with a hamstring issue, so that makes him more doubtful. Chase, they think it's questionable due to the contract holdout, which still could get done. So it was 8.5, it moved to 7.5 in favor of the Bengals. I'm not laying the 7.5 points, but I'm also not betting on the Patriots because the Patriots are awful. So let's go to Andre Yoshivas, who is normally the third wide receiver, who played some good slot time in the preseason, had a good showing in training camp. But again, if we're dealing with the two top wide receivers out, potentially out for the Bengals, Yoshivas, aka Yoshi, is the player to step up. He was sitting at plus 290 earlier today for a touchdown. That's where I got him. I still think he's at plus 230. I still think there's plenty of value there. If he drops below plus 200, I wouldn't go to that number.
Yeah, that's going to be kind of a messy game, right up there with the Vikings matchup as well. Now, there is one that I do have to pick your brain on. No pressure here, but you've got the Washington Commanders taking on the Tampa Bay Bucks. Come on, make my Saturday going into Sunday, I should say, Tom.
Yeah, this is an awesome game from a lot of perspectives. Bucks, I'm going to say, had a good season last year, especially given the expectations with Baker Mayfield. They weren't super high. They make the playoffs. They have a win there. I'm moderately warm on the Buccaneers this year. For the Commanders, obviously, young QB. What are we getting from Jaden Daniels? I think that's fine. An entirely new look offense. They bring in Austin Eckler, et cetera, et cetera. I think this game is going to be entertaining from the fact that maybe there's not a ton of points, and I mean entertaining in terms of we can actually look to take actionable information away from this game and say, can we look at this as a prop perspective going forward, where we know we have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and White coming out of the backfield for the Buccaneers and K-Dot, and all those things are going to be pretty standard for the Buccaneers. But from the Commanders side, what kind of production we get from Daniels? And can we translate that on a week-to-week basis? Are they going to be live in some games? Because a rookie quarterback starting on the road versus a team that made the playoffs last year, they're only 3.5-point underdogs. Does that tell us more about the Buccaneers, or does that tell us more about the Commanders as being a viable team this year?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I mean, considering what Baker Mayfield and company was able to pull off last year, you got a fractured offensive line, but makers playing behind. You've got some guys out of position. Now you've got Godwin getting back into the slot. You've got Mike Evans, who wants to get another 1,000-yard season under his belt. And you've got one of the top rookie offensive linemen, not only in my opinion, but according to BFF and company, that's going to be supporting Baker Mayfield get some big yardage with everyone else. And then you've got Rachaad White. You've got everybody. So it is going to be a telling test, and I think this is going to be a good matchup to see what's really going to roll out throughout this season. But, guys, we're going to give you all the information for NFL storylines, stats, statistics, betting angles throughout this season here on SportsGrid TV. But as of tonight, that's a wrap for me, Kasey Hudson, and Tom Vecchio as we close out Friday Night Football. But stick with us all weekend long and more on SportsGrid TV.